He gets the protection. He goes long, and on his back to ice it is Marquez Valdez-Scantling for the second straight week.
And there it is. The 49ers are going to the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl 58 is a lock between the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs, a rematch of the 2020 Super Bowl. We had two absolute thrillers this past Sunday, AFC NFC Championship games. The Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Baltimore Ravens 17-10 in what was a close one throughout. But my first takeaway from this one, stop the doubt, stop the hate of the Kansas City Chiefs, because it only makes them better. They went into Baltimore and advanced to their sixth Super Bowl. And all the doubt and all the hate on the Chiefs for the entire season, they're not the same Chiefs. Kelsey's washed. Mahomes is having a down year. They're not going anywhere. They lost to the Broncos in Week 8. They lost to the Packers in Week 13. The Raiders in Week 16. Yeah, they're nothing. They're not that juggernaut team that they once were. And they got hot in the playoffs, as they always do, and they marched right into another Super Bowl. The hate has to stop, because it feels like it's only fueling the Chiefs. It's the same thing that people did with Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, and all they did was win, win, win. My second takeaway, Lamar Jackson. He may not be the guy. He may not be that X factor for the Ravens in the playoffs, because clearly he hasn't been. He has a 2-4 playoff record, probably going to get his second MVP. And in the big moment, he crumbled. He looked nervous as all hell throughout that entire game. He looked rattled. There wasn't a second where you thought, all right, Lamar Action Jackson is locked in. He's good. No, his kryptonite was Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs. He dialed up the blitz on par with his style. He dialed up the blitz the entire game, and Lamar just could not handle it. And you look at it, and you look at Peyton Manning, 2-4 playoff record in his first 6 seasons, an MVP. Now, Peyton Manning went on to obviously win 2 Super Bowls, and that could be the same for Lamar, but thus far, we haven't seen it. You saw in 2019, the Ravens had the best record in football, and the Titans went in and smacked them around and blew them out in that game, and that was the year that Lamar won his first MVP. So, I don't know if Lamar is that guy for Baltimore. He's a hell of a player and an outstanding athlete, and does things with his feet that we have not seen since Mike Vick. Might even end up being better than Mike Vick in that facet of the game. But in the playoffs, we haven't seen it from Lamar. Moving on to the next game in the NFC, the San Francisco 49ers overcome a 17-point deficit, the third largest deficit overcame in a championship game in NFL history, and the largest deficit at halftime to overcome in a championship game. The San Francisco 49ers defeat the Detroit Lions 34-31. Pure pain for the Lions. 33 years. They have not gotten to the Super Bowl ever. They're one of 4 teams to never get to the Super Bowl, never get to Graceland. And what an absolute gut-wrenching loss for the Lions. 17 points. My first takeaway, Brock Purdy is him. The Purdy slander the entire year. The guy's been nothing but an MVP candidate, and he proved that he can be similar to Joe Cool in the sense that he was calm, cool, and collected throughout that entire game. And not only was he making perfect throws, but he was a dual threat with his legs. Something that we don't see or haven't seen this in the regular season all that often from Purdy, and he turned it on. He was on. Unlike Lamar Jackson, Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, looked absolutely locked in. He had 43 rushing yards with his legs. He had about 267 through the air, and he came through in the biggest of moments. You had that 3rd and 4 with about 4 minutes to go. You had that 21-yard scamper. He picks up the first with his legs. They go in to punch it in with Elijah Mitchell. And also just a shout out to Christian McCaffrey, who I said was going to be the X factor, and one of the primary reasons why the Lions weren't going to win this football game, and he surely did that. He went out and had 90 on the ground, 40-something in the receiving game, and 2 touchdowns to boot. So CMC is the real deal. Calf injury or no calf injury, he's going to ball. So that's my first takeaway. Brock Purdy is him. You got to stop doubting Brock Purdy because he may not have the best arm. He may not be the flashiest quarterback, but he's proven thus far that he can win big games. Now, the biggest game is what he has to win on February 11th, the Super Bowl, something that Jimmy Garoppolo, who people also looked at as just a game manager, he was not able to do. So if Purdy is able to elevate to that level in the Super Bowl and look as good as he's looked in this playoff run, people can't say anything about the kid. You can't compare him to Jimmy Garoppolo. Look at the weapons that he has, because the fact of the matter is, it's what you do with those weapons. I mean, the throws that he made in that game, and also a shout out to Brandon Ayuk, who had an outstanding performance. You got to get the ball to your weapons, and he was able to do that. He did that against Green Bay with no Deebo Samuel for 3 quarters of football. My second takeaway here, Dan Campbell, the over-aggressive style may be cute in the regular season, but you have to be smart when it comes to playoff football, and Dan Campbell simply did not do that. You had the 4th and 2 in the third quarter, which was the most costly move of the game. They could have went up by 3 possessions with a 45-yard field goal. He decides to gamble. They don't get it. And look at that. The 3 points came back to bite them. It would have been an overtime game had Dan Campbell not been dumb with his decisions. And then in the fourth quarter, on a 4th and 3, he goes for it. First of all, before that, you had Jamison Williams drop a walk-in touchdown on 3rd down, and then they go for it on 4th and 3, and they don't get it with, I think there was like 4 minutes left in that game. So just extremely questionable play calling by Dan Campbell, and cost the city of Detroit a run at a Super Bowl because they had the game in the bag. It was their game to lose. They couldn't get it done. The over-aggressive style, the Bruce Arians risk it no biscuit, the Andy Reid style, obviously we saw in the 2021 divisional against the Browns, up by 5 at midfield with 2 minutes left. Andy Reid gambled with Chad Henne, but it paid off. If it pays off, you look like a god. But when it doesn't twice, and it costs your team a chance at their first ever Super Bowl, there's going to be huge questions about you and your coaching style. I'm not taking anything away from him in the regular season that he had, because he deserves Coach of the Year for crying out loud. He brought the Detroit Lions to the playoffs and to the NFC Championship. So, yes, he's an outstanding coach, but being stupid like that and trying to be, Mr. Tough Guy and Mr. Let's prove a point, dumb. They could have went up by 3 possessions. That game's in the bag. The Niners probably don't come back, but that's what he did. They gambled, and now we have a Super Bowl matchup again between the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs.